Good morning, educators. Welcome back to our virtual summit session. I'm really proud to kick off this workshop titled Engaging Learners Remotely Through Feedback, something as teachers we're always passionate about. My name is Tanya Hyatt. I'm a senior marketing manager here at eDynamic Learning and a former teacher myself, so I'm in love with this topic as well. With me today is Christine Yarzavec, who has spent the last 15 years in a variety of roles in education. She's been a classroom teacher, an Apple professional learning specialist, a professional learning manager at Digital Promise, a manager of digital learning resources at Fairfax County Public Schools, as well as acted as a consultant supporting projects around curriculum and instructional design. She's passionate about helping organizations reach their full potential and encouraging leaders to think differently about learning with effective use of technology and real-world experiences. Christine holds a master's degree in language and literacy and also has certifications in early elementary education, technology integration, and middle-level mathematics. She's also currently working through an instructional design program with Oregon State University. So some of you also provided some questions when you registered for this workshop. So if time permits, you know the drill, 25 minutes goes really fast. So if time permits after the presentation, I'll field a couple of questions out to Christine to answer. With so many of us on the line today, your phones are on mute, but feel free to chat in any questions using that question panel on your GoToWebinar control panel on the right-hand side of your screen. And again, if time permits, I'll field some questions out to Christine at the end. However, if we do run out of time, I want you to know that we will be in touch with you. We won't be leaving you hanging. So if there's questions that we need to address, we'll follow up with you. So I want to thank you again for your time this morning. And without further ado, I am going to pass controls over to Christine. Thank you so much, Christine.
Great. Thank you, Tanya. I really appreciate it. That was such a nice introduction. And thank you, everyone, for joining in on a Saturday morning. I appreciate you. I know that every day feels a bit the same. So what's the difference with some professional learning on a Saturday, right? So right now, I want to talk about engaging learners remotely through feedback, especially in these times of COVID. It's so incredibly important and a topic that I'm extremely passionate about on how to make sure our learners are supported by us through continual feedback in an online environment. So we already did a little bit about me. Currently, I'm working as an educational consultant, and that means that I'm wearing a variety of hats. As Tanya said, I'm doing some coursework in instructional design. And I'm also spend most of my hours during the week working for an organization called Strategic Education, which is the parent company for Strayer and Capella universities. And I'm working as a content specialist to support them as they integrate employability skills into their gen ed courses. So it's meaningful work that, again, I'm very, very passionate about, and one where we talk about feedback a lot as well. So I'll talk more about my experience and why feedback is a topic I love. But basically today we're going to talk about what is feedback, my feedback experience. I'm going to share with you 10 strategies or tips that you could immediately apply into your classroom, your online classroom. And I'm going to share with you 3 tools that I stand behind and I think are great for this process. And then, like Tanya said, if there's time, which there should be, we will stop for some Q&A. So let's jump right in. Our essential question for today is really, how can feedback improve learning? And again, like I said, in times of COVID, we need to be extremely mindful of how we're being present and providing feedback to our online learners in a course, right? So when I think of feedback, you can Google a definition, and there are many of them out there. But I always look toward Grant Wiggins. And if you don't know Grant Wiggins, he is one of the co-authors of Understanding by Design, UBD, which you probably have heard in your schools or districts. But it's an educational planning approach with the idea that they're using backwards design, meaning that they look at the outcomes first in order to plan, design, curriculum, assessments, learning activities, and so on. So his idea of feedback is one kind of the gold standard that I always go back to. Feedback is information about how we are doing in our efforts to reach a goal. It's simple, but it's one that you should say 10 times in your head because I want you to remember the important piece of that definition is that it's what we're doing in our efforts to reach that specific goal. How can we help our learners get to that certain place? And we'll talk about some examples here. So again, check out Grant Wiggins. He has wonderful resources on giving and receiving feedback. So for me, I'm not usually a big fan of talking about non-examples, but in this scenario, it makes a lot of sense for me. So feedback is not what it's not. It's not evaluation, it's not advice, and it's not praise. It could be a combination of all three in some capacity, plus a little bit more information, but ultimately it's not one of these things in isolation. So feedback is not evaluation means good job, you got a C on the assignment, right? It's not just, hey, here's your letter grade, here's your 95%, whatever it is. It's not advice. So feedback should be more concrete. It shouldn't just be, I think you should do ... It's more of a recommendation. Try this out, do this, not I think you should, etc. That makes sense. And finally, praise. And this is one that I think it's important to always praise, of course, but again, feedback must be praise plus some additional information to support your learners. So praise would be your typical good job, great work, smiley face at the top of your paper. And again, thinking of what it's not can really help us create feedback that's more meaningful in our online environments. So here's some quick examples, again, ones that I took from Understanding by Design. But instead of saying nice job on the project, Jim, a way to make it better, and I'll read this to you really quickly, still incorporating that element of praise, which we all love, that nice pat on the back, right? But instead, you can also add something extremely specific. So nice job on the project, Jim. You answered the essential questions in great depth with lots of illustrative examples, and your oral presentation was polished and informative, right? So as a learner, if I'm receiving that feedback, not only do I know I did a stellar job on the project, but I can go back and recognize those specific elements where I did even better than I thought I did, and maybe help another learner along the way, right? So here's another example. Next time, Sam, you'll want to make the thesis clearer to the reader. And I have received feedback like this many, many times before. And I think if I read something like this, I'm desperately wanting more information, right? So how could I make it clearer? How could I do better? Instead of just saying, make it clearer, because that puts it back on me and makes me wonder, well, how do I even get started on this process? So I love this one. I'll read it to you again quickly. I found it very difficult to grasp your main point. At the start, it seemed that you were arguing against mining coal, but in paragraph 3, you focused on the need to provide healthcare to all workers. Next time, Sam, you'll want to make your thesis clearer to the reader. I love this because the learner can read this feedback, go exactly back in paragraph 3, and think and reflect on their work and have that aha moment, which then they can then implement into their work. So hopefully that makes sense. Those are just 2 quick examples. And to be honest, I'm guilty of giving both of those types of feedback. But in this case, here is how you can reflect and be able to give your learner a little bit more to help them along the way. So I hate to give this a thumbs down, but the reason why I'm so passionate about this topic is because I think as a learner, along my many years in as a learner and then in the classroom, I really didn't get the feedback that I needed. And maybe some of you are feeling the same way. But as a student, like I said before, I received a lot of praise, right? I think we all did. We've all gotten stickers at the top of our papers or stamps or smiley faces, but I never once, I don't think, got more than a great job, right? So what did I do well? I have no idea, but overall I did a great job. And that's kind of where they left it, right? As an elementary teacher, I taught 1st and 4th grade for many years. It's where I started. And I switched grade levels. I remember I went from 1st grade to 4th grade and I thought, oh my gosh, this is so daunting. How am I going to start brand new? I need so much help, but I'm not really sure how to ask for help. And my principal came in 2 times a year. Maybe you've had this experience. And every time she came in the room, she offered negative feedback. And it really deflated me as a teacher, thinking, oh, I've got this, I'm doing a great job. And it made me feel bad about myself. It made me beat up myself and think, oh my gosh, how could I do this better? And I really didn't know how to talk to her about this, because it's not something we ever talked about in our teacher training programs. And now as an online learner, I'm not bashing my program at all. I'm having an amazing time learning all about instructional design, and I'm almost done. But I'm struggling because I'm finding it comical that I'm taking a course in instructional design, and oftentimes I'm taking classes in feedback and assessment and evaluation, and I'm receiving poor feedback. And it's not really helping me grow as a learner. So I wanted to share a few of these examples. And as you can pick out, you can find the praise, the evaluation, and the advice that we talked about before, right? So those three things that I'm getting, but I'm not getting much more than that. So here's an example. I took screenshots right from my LMS here. Again, I'm overall having a wonderful experience. I wanted to put that first and foremost. But on the left here, it says, keep up the good work. Thanks for doing your peer feedback posts, and let me know if you have any questions. And that's it. So as you can see, you can pull apart, I got praise. I got some bit of evaluation there, right? Thanks for doing your peer feedback posts. Well, ultimately I had to do those posts, right? I didn't really have a choice in the matter. And let me know if you have any questions. I probably had a billion questions at this point. But in my mind, as a learner, I have to get to the next assignment because I don't want to fall behind. So this feedback came at the very end of the assignment. I didn't have time to really process, reflect, go back into my work because I had to jump right into the next thing. There wasn't that time built into that. And same with the second example. Great work on your live broadcast, Christine. YouTube is a great tool. I hope you had fun with it. Again, the assignment was to create a YouTube broadcast. I had to go live and do kind of like a talk and invite followers in. And I was a nervous wreck about this assignment. And this is all that I got in return. So I would have loved more feedback on how I did and how I could maybe use this in an online setting. But again, just examples of feedback that I'm sure that you all are very comfortable with. To me though, when I think of when my ideas around feedback changed is really when after I taught in the classroom, I'm gonna put all of this up here, I started working for Apple Retail. So I was working full-time as a teacher, and then at night I would go to the Apple store and I'd work until 11 o'clock at night. We cleaned the store. And I was exhausted, but I was so completely energized because Apple has an amazing culture around feedback. And I want to reiterate that over and over and over again to you, is that if you can create a culture of feedback within your online environment with your students, you're going to see major changes. You're going to see more engaged learners that are excited to come in, that know their expectations, that are not afraid to provide feedback to you and not afraid to receive feedback in return. So the reason why I bring this up is that the rumor is that when you apply for Apple, they look at your resume and they say, could this candidate go toe to toe with Steve Jobs? Meaning that Steve Jobs was not a very easy person to work with. He provided a lot of feedback. He wanted it in return. He was quick on his feet. Could this person be in the same room and be able to engage in conversation with Steve Jobs and give him feedback, which is a daunting thing, right? But at Apple, when I started in the retail store, you would think that the training would all be around buttons to push, hardware, software, things like that. But ultimately, our 2-week training was all about working with people and giving feedback, which just blew my mind, right? So feedback to Apple is so important. And since that moment where I learned about this, it's completely changed the way I tackle feedback. In any environment, whether it's giving feedback to my mom or giving feedback to a learner in an online environment. So at Apple, we had to give feedback to the managers, and the managers gave feedback to us, which created that culture of feedback where we weren't scared to share our ideas and our opinions and call things out when maybe they weren't right. So I definitely encourage you to remember that phrase, culture of feedback, that you can share with your students and really build that up at the beginning of a course to ensure that you're both getting the most out of this learning experience. And I just saw this on Twitter. I thought I would share. I have to say, I don't even think I follow Sean Hops, which is funny. I think I saw this tweet because one of my other followers liked it. But it really got me thinking about the times we're in right now and what learning should look like. And his question was, is the world ready for an education system focused around feedback and growth instead of grades? And I think this is something we really need to process, right? I think I could do an entire day, if not week session on just this question. But but it's just something to ponder, that let's focus more around the feedback we're providing instead of the, my student got a 10 out of 10 on the quiz at the end of the week, right? We want to be able to provide our learners with feedback that's ongoing so that they can grow in multiple ways and not just showing that through one little assignment at the end of a week, right? So this is going to be rapid fire, and I apologize in advance that this slide is a bit overwhelming, but I'm going to share with you 10 strategies for providing this type of feedback to learners in an online environment. And I want you to keep in mind that this is not new information. This is things that I've taken with me from a variety of articles and presentations and experiences in the classroom. There's a lot of overlap, but I think they all really encompass some great tips for you to provide that meaningful feedback to your students. So first and foremost, feedback must be timely, right? So when you're providing feedback, it's important that after the student maybe turns in an assignment, that you offer feedback as immediately as you possibly can. I know things happen. I know we have little ones at home that we're chasing around, especially during these crazy times, but the faster you can do it, the more meaningful it is for the learners. I think I've mentioned before that I've turned in a quiz or I turned in an assignment and then I get feedback 2 weeks later and I can't really even remember what I turned in the first place, right? The feedback didn't really matter at that point. So the closer it is to that turn in of the assignment, the more meaningful it is going to be for the learner. So feedback should be specific and actionable, as specific as you possibly can. And I showed that in those two examples at the beginning, right? Actionable. I love that one example that was like, look at paragraph 3 or look at your thesis statement, right? It's having them look at those specific areas where they could improve to then take action. Feedback should be frequent. So it should be, again, I know we're all overwhelmed, especially in these times, right? But I want you to think about providing feedback on anything you possibly can, whether it's something in a discussion board, whether it's checking in halfway through the assignment. Provide feedback wherever and whenever you can to help your learners be the best that they could be, right? Okay, peer review. These are a little, I'm jumping all over the place, but I think you get the idea here. If you're feeling overwhelmed with, let's say you have to teach 100 students in an online class coming up this fall, which can be completely daunting and overwhelming. Remember that you can rely on peer review whenever you need to. So I think it's also, incorporate peer review as much as you possibly can, because students are not just hearing from you as a teacher, but can also hear from as many classmates as they possibly can about their work and incorporate that feedback. So as the instructor, as a teacher, make sure that you're setting expectations for feedback. I like to think of this as if you're teaching an online course, in the syllabus or right there in the first week of class, make sure you're setting expectations about what feedback should look like. So what I mean here is talk about discussion threads. Maybe you have some sentence starters. Maybe it's comment on 5 of your peers by Sunday, something like that, so that they know what the expectation is. Also, what I think about in this aspect is, as a teacher, also come right out of the gate and say, hey, I want your feedback too. I need you to check in with me whenever possible so that we can make sure that we are in a good place and you are comfortable in this learning environment. So put that right out there in the front to make sure everyone's comfortable with giving and receiving feedback. Be present. This is definitely one I'm thinking about as an online learner right now, is that oftentimes I receive feedback at the end of an assignment. So I like to put myself in an instructor's shoes. Yes, I know that you have a lot of people you have to keep track of, but it would be so nice if someone would say, hey, if you're having trouble, I would love to do a Zoom call with you and talk one-on-one. Here are some open office hours I can provide you. Or even it could be as simple as providing feedback in a discussion thread where you don't really have to, because you're relying on the students in the class. But if you're present, the students are more engaged. They see that you're in there. They see that you're looking. And I think they're going to do their best work. Ask questions. This is a simple one that kind of encompasses all the ones that we've already talked about, but make sure you're continuing to ask good questions of your learners to get them thinking and get them to reflect on their work. Involve the learner. So what I mean with this one is that we could all give feedback on a 5-paragraph essay, right? But I want you to think about the process to get to that 5-paragraph essay. Are you giving your learners feedback on how they're studying, on how they're reading, on how they're doing research? Because those skills, those kind of more soft skills that could be applied to any content area, are really what's going to help them in the long run in life and in the workforce, right? So involve them in the process from beginning to end and check in whenever possible. Find the positive. So with this one, I think about me as a first grade teacher way back when we had to do report card comments, and as teachers, we knew that it was a lot of work, right? But we all had to do it. Same with giving feedback. It's a lot of work, but it's important. It's so incredibly important. So find the positive. For me, I had to do glows on one side of the report card and grows on the other, meaning what did the student glow in and what could they grow in? So put a little bit of a positive spin on the things you can work on. But by saying those positive things first, it's a really simple tactic, but it makes a big difference. If you say, hey, you're doing a great job with this, and this is the reasons why, but this is what you can improve on, I think you're going to hook your learners in a little bit better that way. And then finally, use rubrics. Use rubrics for feedback, use rubrics for any assignment that you're doing. And this is going to make your life easier because you can constantly have the rubric really providing the feedback, right? So you could pull the rubric up, create a short video and say, hey, Jim, you did not meet this expectation for column A because blah, 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 right? So use rubrics to help you and support you in giving feedback. And again, as much as you possibly can. A lot of overlap here. I hope this helps, but 10 quick strategies for making the most out of that feedback experience with your learners. Checking on the time here. Okay, so when I think of providing feedback, this is a great graphic. It's so extremely simple, but it's one I can't remember if I saw it in an article or a book or at Apple. I can't even remember, but if you're doing an exercise with your students on how to give feedback, show them this grid. If you're an administrator working with teachers on how to give feedback, show them this grid, give examples, have them place the feedback that they're giving in the different quadrants to see if they're leaning more toward the right or more toward the left. And obviously you see here, our goal is to the right, right? We want it to be positive specific or negative specific, but as long as it's specific feedback. So just a great visual tool that's so simple that could really help out in reflecting on your own feedback process. So 3 tools, and I'll do this quickly because I think I'm already running out of time. So in times of COVID, I know that when the world shut down, we all got 1 trillion emails from ed tech companies telling us that their platform was free, which is so generous and so wonderful, but it really overwhelmed me. I started making accounts and getting excited, and then I needed to stop because it was way too much information. So I wanted to share with you just 3 tools. And what's great about these 3 tools is they were free before COVID. So they're not going to be paid anytime soon. So please download them now, try them out. They're all free. Flipgrid is one of my all-time favorites. I'm sure you've heard of this one before, but it's a great tool to do video feedback. So you can pose a question as an instructor, and students use a video response to answer, and then can do video to respond to each other. It's so simple to set up, I promise. You literally create an account, you can create a grid in seconds, and then you share that grid link out to your learners, and they can come in and be a part of that. Screencastify is one I feel like I've had for a long time, an oldie but a goodie. It is a way for you to record feedback through video. You can record a quick video with your face. You can record your screen, whatever you are comfortable with, but you can record and embed it in any platform really easily. And I think there's a little add-on on your toolbar there that you just click the button and it starts recording. Now, the last one, I'm going to butcher the name. I always do. Kazina is what I think it is. This is one I haven't used. I've downloaded and played around with it a lot. It's actually a word in Japanese that means good change, which I love in the world of feedback. But it's a Google add-on that you and the learner both need to download. And from there, it's kind of like Google Comments amplified. So you can embed your rubrics, you can embed video, you can embed text, you can put in YouTube clips. So I know for me as a learner, when I am opening a Google document and asking for feedback, oftentimes I see hundreds of comments and it's really overwhelming. I think this helps streamline it and make it a little bit more visually appealing so that you and the learner can engage back and forth a bit easier. So I know that was quick, but 3 quick tools I would definitely recommend playing around with a little bit and finding which one works best for you. So ultimately, things to keep in mind, we talked about a lot of strategies, a few tools, but my tools that we just talked about were all focused around video. And I know video is scary. I know I hated when people would come in and ask, can I video your lesson? I would be like, oh, a nervous wreck. But audio and video can be really powerful. Not only do students miss seeing your face, but they can't hear your tone in a written comment, right? So providing that video, while it can be scary, I ask you to stretch out of your comfort zone and try it out, because it doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to record a billion times. If you say and you need a minute to think, that's totally okay. Learners just want to see you. They want to hear you, and that's the best way to do this. Talk to your learners. So all that means is, if you're worried about implementing a new tool or you don't think you're giving enough feedback, ask them. I mean, it's as simple as that, right? Talk to your learners, see what their needs are and how you can better support them. And then ultimately, use what tool works best for you. I told you to download those tools and try them out, but please pick one good thing that you could use in an online environment to provide feedback, and don't think you have to do all the bells and whistles and incorporate everything, because that's just going to overwhelm, make you crazy. Pick one thing that works great for you and your learners and stick to it, because ultimately that's going to be, the simpler the better, to make a better learning experience for everyone involved. So I talked really quickly, Tanya. I think I made it to the 26 minute mark here, but I'd love to continue this conversation. Hopefully you can hear my passion for the topic around feedback. Please follow me on Twitter, reach out. I'd love to talk more about feedback and hear how you're doing in your online classes, but I am open to any questions that are out there.
That is fantastic. Oh my gosh, Christine, I think we all can resonate as teachers and as personal learners, like you stated, about the feedback that we've gotten that probably isn't the best or most effective. So we did have a couple questions come in, but I will say that everybody loved your 10 strategies. I think it's great to have that kind of prompt, so absolutely. But unfortunately, we're out of time. So I'm going to actually just remind everybody that if you did have a question come in, we will be following up with you, so we won't leave you hanging with that. And I just want to also just again thank you, Christine, for your expertise. This is insanely valuable information for us to take, especially as we are working more and more online. Good reminders of things. And for everybody who joined in, thank you so much for your time this morning. I want to remind you that you will have an attachment, a follow-up email that we will attach this recording so that you can go back and revisit what Christine had stated, as well as having a certificate of participation. You will also receive a survey. We would love to hear your feedback. It helps us with next steps and next time. And of course, if you want to find out more information about other sessions taking place today, please visit tinyurl.com/EDL Summit. And of course, if you want to get in touch with us or us to pass anything else along to Christine, you can email us at hello@eDynamiclearning.com. So again, thank you all for joining, sticking with us. And again, thank you, Christine, so much for your time this morning. It was great.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.